Look, Ringo, I'm sorry about the whole swimming away thing. Too bad, you should have been sorry before you threw me off that boat. Well, what do you expect me to do? Edit the video? No, Greg. I expect you to get your nuts lasered off. Hey everyone, welcome back to Double O Wasteland. I'm Greg, and the guy trying to laser my cojones off is Ringo. This is a series where I'm taking a look at each of the Bond films in chronological order. Thankfully, Ringo's a typical supervillain, so I've got a few minutes here before the laser gets me, which means we can talk about 1964's Goldfinger.
Goldfinger!
Gonna start with a trigger warning for violence, and also there will be a second trigger warning a little bit later for some heavy stuff. Sean Connery is back once again, reprising his role as
Bond, James Bond.
Additionally, Gert Frobe stars as Auric Goldfinger, one of Bond's most famous villains.
This is Mr. Goldfinger.
No, seriously, try to think of some others. Who do you come up with? 006, Blofeld, Jaws? Psh. Our Bond girl this time is Honor Blackman, playing Pussy Galore. Yup.
My name is Pussy Galore.
Harold Sakata stars as Oddjob, Auric's right-hand man, and the most bullshit character in the GoldenEye game.
Oh, you must excuse Oddjob, Mr. Bond.
Rounding out the main cast, we have Jill Masterson, played by Shirley Eaton, who is very much alive and not dead despite the urban myth that she died on set from the gold body paint that was applied to her.
Jill?
Here she is in 2012, alive.
I think the first three set the pattern.
She was also in the third episode of Mythbusters, where they tested the myth about dying from body paint. Since I don't have another place to put it in the script, let's take a look at what Austin Powers spoofed from this movie. We have a lot of Vagina, clearly a reference to Pussy Galore, played by Fabiana Udenio.
This is my Italian confidential secretary. Her name is Alata. Alata Vagina.
Come again.
A lot of vagina.
We have Random Task, portrayed by Joe Son.
Random Task. Korean ex-wrestler, evil handyman extraordinaire. Random Task. Show them what you do.
As a quick aside, this character gave us a scene I've quoted for years, and I'm gonna continue doing so.
That really hurt. I'm gonna have a lump there, you idiot. Who throws a shoe? Honestly.
And of course, Goldmember, who is, of course, played by Michael Myers.
I love gold.
Returning to their roles from previous films are Bernard Lee as M, Lois Maxwell as the ever-thirsty Moneypenny, and Desmond Llewellyn as Q.
Who is she, James?
She is me, Miss Moneypenny. And kindly omit the customary byplay with 007. He's dining with me, and I don't want him to be late.
So there's hope for me yet.
Moneypenny, won't you ever believe me?
The plot of Goldfinger revolves around Bond chasing Auric Goldfinger to figure out how he's smuggling gold across the international borders. Along the way, Bond learns that Goldfinger has something much bigger planned, something called Operation Grand Slam. He wants to irradiate the gold supply at Fort Knox using a dirty bomb he's had smuggled into the country, thus triggering
Economic chaos in the West, and the value of your gold increases many times.
In the end, Bond defeats Goldmember, Oddjob, and wins Pussy to his side while also saving the U.S. gold reserve. This is normally the part where I would start in on my review, but honestly, there's not much I can say about Goldfinger that hasn't been said a trillion times. My gut instinct on first watch was, hey, this is it, this is the template for all future Bond movies, and I was going to go into that a bit, but then that sentiment is on the Wikipedia entry for this movie like 8 times, and that doesn't seem like exactly groundbreaking information. Goldfinger has won a variety of awards, has been placed high on lists that rank overall great movies, won an Oscar for sound editing, etc. I'm still going to talk about it a little bit because it would be a pretty shit review of me to say this movie is good and if you don't believe me, check out Wikipedia. But I thought this would be a good spot to pivot to something a little more meta. If you're not interested, I'll put a time code to skip past this and a quick trigger warning for some heavy family stuff. Seriously, I'm going to talk about a personal loss in my family, and if that's not what you need today, then skip forward to... Why James Bond? Why this franchise? It's a fair question. The series hasn't really been relevant since Skyfall, at least not in the way bigger action series like Mission Impossible, Fast and the Furious, and of course the MCU are. That's here in the US anyway. I know that No Time to Die was huge internationally, but I'm an American, goddammit. Also, streaming MCU land coming sometime. But I chose the Bond movies for 2 reasons. I have the DVDs on hand, which makes things relatively easy, and I've been a fan of the Bond franchise my entire life, and that's mainly thanks to my dad. Growing up, my dad and I watched a ton of movies together, which is to say, he would be watching movies that he wanted to watch, and if I was well behaved, I could stay. Spoilers, I did not always get to stay. We watched McClintock, Rambo, The Magnificent Seven, Enter the Dragon, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Rumble in the Bronx, and Lethal Weapon. Was I always paying attention? No, because some of those movies like McClintock and The Magnificent Seven are really boring to a kid. Blockbuster trips were an every other weekend affair for us, but what we watched the most, hands down, was any James Bond movie, anywhere. It didn't matter if it wasn't in English or if there was only 20 minutes left when we found it on cable. He'd put it on, and we'd watch it.
This December on the Superstation, Bond is taking to the air with 15 days of 007.
It may get a bit bumpy.
Of the Bond movies, Goldfinger was one of his all-time favorites. I swear I must have seen this movie over a dozen times in my life, but it's been a while since my last viewing because my father died of a heart attack very suddenly in 2008, and it's been hard for me to watch these old Bond movies without him. For a time, I passed it off as, oh, my interests have changed, or there's a million other things to watch. But over the last few years, I've come to realize that I was, on some level anyway, distancing myself from something that was going to hurt. I'm not sure how I managed to make it through Dr. No or From Russia with Love without feeling melancholy, but from the moment the theme song played, I knew I'd be watching Goldfinger through a lens tinted by wistful nostalgia. When Connery delivered this line,
Shocking.
I could hear my dad snicker as if we were sitting in our old living room, watching this movie on TBS. When Pussy Galore introduced herself, I could almost feel my dad's elbow hitting mine to see if I got the joke, subtle though it may have been. It felt less like I was watching the movie in 2023 and more like I was watching the movie at various ages throughout my life. I could see my folks' dinner table, hear our family dog, taste the store-brand cola that we always drank. Sometimes my brother's there, other times my uncles and cousins, but sometimes it was just the 2 of us. And it's easy to tell that what he enjoyed more than watching the movie was watching my reaction to it. And as the film neared its finale, we see this absolute banger of a shot. I knew this montage was coming to an end. I figured it was going to be rough to watch this one, but I didn't expect to react so strongly. Some say the bar for great art is that it evolves an emotional response, and while I don't know if Goldfinger itself really gets the credit here, it's a movie that I doubt I could ever watch without thinking about my dad. The funny thing is, if he heard that last bit implying that I didn't know if Goldfinger was great, he'd definitely have something to say about it. Those of you who know me personally know that I like to talk and I love to argue.
And the award for Understatement of the Year goes to...
And that doesn't come from nowhere. Both of my parents are fans of the art of debate. But if Dad was still around, he'd be getting an absolute kick out of me talking about the movies he loved, and he'd also be a bit put out that I hadn't talked about the Bond car at all. Don't worry, I'm getting there. I hate that he doesn't get a chance to see these videos. I miss you, Dad. I don't really have a great way to transition out of this, and I'm not going to put much effort into figuring one out. So let's just let my meow cover of the Bond theme song play for a few seconds, and then we'll get back into the movie. Goldfinger is a good movie, and I think what makes it stand above the previous two is that there's always something happening in every scene. I've noted that both Dr. No and From Russia with Love contain multiple scenes of what was effectively Sean Connery just wandering around a set, and while they made sense in the movie, they didn't exactly help with pacing. With Goldfinger, even scenes that are light on dialogue feel well-paced and well-placed, not running too long and contributing to the feeling that the studio and the production team had taken a step forward in their movie-making skills. All that being said, there is one scene that stood out to me as both awkward and unclear as to its purpose.
Well, dress rehearsal went like a dream, Skipper. Good. You'll get your final briefing tonight. That'll be all for now.
My best guess here is that the shot is supposed to be for us to go, damn, hot pilot ladies or something, but it feels weird and it did kind of jar me when I was watching the film. Thankfully, it's one of the few shots that did so. I mentioned at the top that the general consensus is that this is the template for all future Bond movies, but I do want to put extra emphasis here on the gadgets. This is the first time that Bond uses really out there gadgets, as his last few have basically been a collapsible rifle. This is always one of my favorite parts of Bond movies, and Goldfinger absolutely delivers. In the last video, I did try to use a scene of Bond and Q talking, but because my use of 1 full minute of a 2-hour Bond movie from 60 years ago would somehow damage the ability of MGM or Sony to make money off of it, and it ended up getting copyright claimed all to hell, it didn't really come across. So this time I'm gonna chop the scene up a little bit, because we all know the one thing we absolutely cannot allow is for a studio to lose money. So here we go. Bond has a tracker that makes the most obnoxious beeping sound in the world. And that's cool, but almost all of his better tricks come from the first Bond car.
You'll be using this Aston Martin DB5 with modifications.
It's got bulletproof windows, oil slicks,
far and away the most expensive shot, but it was integral to the story.
Smoke screens, machine guns, and coolest of all, a motherfucking passenger ejector seat.
Ejector seat? You're joking.
I never joke about my work, 007.
I never really understood why the driver didn't have an ejector seat, but hey, Bond makes use of it well. While none of this is the most realistic of gadgets, this is probably as pared down as Bond gets for the foreseeable future. I know it's a ways off, but in one of the Pierce Brosnan movies, he's rocking a car that can turn invisible. So when I say that this loadout is tame and grounded in comparison, you'll understand.
Aston Martin call it the Vanquish, we call it the Vanish.
Now that we've covered all that, let's go to the scorecard. Kill count. Upwards of 100? This is a problem I'm going to run into a bunch moving forward, but in the beginning of the movie, Bond is blowing up a chemical supply plant that could have killed a lot of people. We have no idea how big the enemy force was against him, but either way, this third movie marks the beginning of a more trigger-happy Bond than we've seen in the last two films, with James seemingly much more willing to just kill a guard rather than slip by them. Body count. 2. Bond gets busy with Miss Jill Masterson and then she dies. And then later on, he gets to find out if Pussy Galore lives up to her name.
Oh, no, you don't. This is no time to be rescued.
This is a step back from his journey through Istanbul, and honestly, despite the name Pussy Galore, this movie is overall less horny than From Russia with Love. Villain rating: A+. I said at the top that Auric Goldfinger is a fucking iconic villain, and I meant it. I played the scene for laughs at the beginning, but go ahead and find me a more well-known Bond villain scene than this.
The purpose of our 2 previous encounters is now very clear to me. I do not intend to be distracted by another. Good night, Mr. Bond.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. There is nothing you can talk to me about that I don't already know.
I mean, it's been almost 60 years since this movie came out, and despite wilder villains, more diabolical schemes, and much bigger budgets, the franchise can't outdo its third antagonist. I say that, but watch, by the end of the series I'll be like, actually, I think blah 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 is better. I know myself. Also, Goldfinger has a laser truck, and how fucking cool in that retro way is this shit? Best one-liner. This movie really solidifies Bond's use of the one-liners throughout the rest of the movies. We'll see it constantly in future films, but in this movie, I think it's a tie between he blew a fuse.
Where's your butler friend?
Oh, he blew a fuse.
Or certainly better bread than the owner.
Animal, isn't she?
Certainly better bread than the owner.
I think technically the fuse line is what we mean when we talk about one-liners, and I was leaning towards that, but Bond's dunk on Auric is pretty goddamn good. So I'll call it a tie because I can. Ringo's not here to stop me. Wahaha! Theme song. I'd give this a solid B, and this is where I'm going to drop a hot take on those of you who made it this far. I pretty much don't like these theme songs. Goldfinger is a catchy tune, performed incredibly well by Shirley Bassey. But none of the songs have ever really stuck with me. Pull me aside in a month and ask me to sing 2 bars from this track, and I almost guarantee I won't be able to. Unlike From Russia with Love, as I'm writing the script I can still hear it in my mind, so it goes up a letter grade from the last time, landing that sweet, sweet coveted B. Overall, I give Goldfinger a 007 out of 007. It's not my favorite Bond movie, but it's near the top of the list. It's a fantastic film that obviously has a deep emotional impact for me personally, but even outside that, it's a movie that stands up relatively well to the test of time. Goldfinger is filled with iconic characters and scenes, and it's a movie that will feel both familiar and fun to fans of the series at any level. It's a can't miss in the franchise, and I think that even if you're not a mega fan of the genre, it's worth your 2 hours. Anyway, that's it for me. The lasers almost got me, so I gotta figure out a way out of here. Hopefully Ringo relents. You can find our podcast weekly, streaming Wasteland, on Spotify, on iTunes, on Amazon Music. Shout out Amazon for featuring us on their movies and TVs page. You can find us on all of the various social medias. You know the ones, I don't need to list them out. You can obviously check here on YouTube for more videos like this. Next up, we have Thunderball, a movie that makes you wonder, okay, how far can James take this? And the answer is still not that far. It's still not the one where he goes in space. Until next time, see you later.